Welcome to the first episode of the Unscripted Pharmacist. I'm Kyle Rootsaert, and I'm joined today with Chris Stevenson.
Hey, Kyle.
Chris is a nurse that we both work at the same hospital together. So
yeah, I'm an oncology nurse at a hospital in California, Northern California, and Kyle is a pharmacist.
An inpatient pharmacist, yes.
So it's episode 1, so we've got a lot to talk about. And for people that are just tuning in, they're what are the hell are these guys going to talk about? And I kid you not, this is going to be very, very interesting because Kyle is a wild man. He's very passionate about a particular subject. Okay, so hang in there, okay? He has an amazing story. So start us off.
So I'm very passionate and very fanatical about kind of the things that I've discovered almost kind of accidentally or really just trying to do my job. And what I discovered was that patients really weren't getting the education that they needed to really treat their disease state. So I would have patients that come to the consultation window at a local retail pharmacy, and they'd be like, diabetes? What do you mean I'm diabetic? Wow, I caught the disease. Like it was some sort of transmissible, like
contagious, or something.
Something that you contracted yourself. Like it was something you all of a sudden that this was the next step of life. So I very, very quickly realized that the education was lacking, and that I needed to help them. And so patients would ask me, like, what do I do? What is this? What do I eat? You know, what medications do I take? And I'm like, I actually don't know what to eat. So I started learning more about nutrition because I felt like this was a big black hole for me. We got some nutritional education in pharmacy school, but we didn't get, it wasn't really current. It didn't make a lot of sense. It was all to me about calories, and I hated calories. I still hate calories. I don't even talk about calories. Calories for me is like, I don't know, you would need a scale and I've got to burn stuff. It's confusing as heck.
Okay, for people that are just starting to watch us, obviously everyone is starting to just now starting to watch us, they should know that we're not selling anything.
Oh, no.
We're here to help people.
Yeah,
right?
We're here to do our job, actually. This is what I've taken on.
We don't have a website that we want you to subscribe to. We're just really just trying to help people, okay?
Yeah.
And so this is what Kyle has learned to do, okay? And this is what he does now.
I've been doing this for a while, almost 10 years. It just kind of started off with making little pieces of information applicable to the patient. Like, using analogies that made sense to them, trying to help them understand in a very basic way. And I realized that if they learn the basics, that they could figure it out when they went somewhere and they needed to do something, whether it was food related or movement or whatever it was. I wanted my patients to be the most educated patients. So there I was giving advice and having these patients come back a month later for their refills. So I was like, man, this is great. They come back and they say, hey, that advice worked, it was great. I lost 10 pounds. My doctor says, whatever you're doing, just keep it up because your blood pressure's improved, or they've noticed something different about them. Mm-hmm. So whether it was more energy, or they were now able to fit in a piece of clothing they always wanted to, or they were getting ready to go on some sort of trip, and they're like, hey, this is really helping. So it kind of fueled my own passion to realize that my information that I was able to collect was useful. I really needed to open my mouth. I really needed to go, hey, I've got something of value. Let me share and let's see what it does. I mean, why not? Because what we're doing now is it's sick care, right? It's not health care, it's sick care. We're just treating people that have chronic disease. That's the majority of our patients. That's 88% of the population has some form of chronic disease. That means that's only 12% of the population. That's like 1 out of 8 that's walking around with normal biology, normal metabolic health.
It's true. In fact, the statistics that I've been seeing lately are that about 33% or a third of us are obese.
Yeah.
But even more than that, there are a lot of people that are a vast majority of us are just unhealthy in ways that we may not even realize. There's something called, I saw this, TOFI, which means thin on the outside.
TOFI, yes.
Yeah, and fat on the inside. Because all right, so in a healthcare setting, we can look and see how much fat, especially belly fat, that a person has, and even thin people have too much. Okay.
Yeah, because it's just, where is it, right?
Yeah.
So does what you have on the scale, does that tell you anything about your health? Not really, right? So if it shakes, jiggles, it's okay. Okay? If it's taut and it doesn't shake very much and you've got something here, that's on the inside. So we call that ectopic fat. That means it's fat that kind of has nowhere else to go. So it's going to go places that you don't want it to go, like heart muscle.
Okay.
Muscle.
So let me slow you down here for a second. We've talked a little bit about health and nutrition and diabetes, but let's kind of give people an idea of where this is going. What ultimately, what's the big picture?
Where are we? Are we getting...
What's the big picture that Kyle is trying to teach? Okay?
I'm just trying to educate people. That's very true. Yes.
But educate on what? Exactly?
I want my patients to be the smartest.
Okay.
I want them to be like, hey, I know you because you're really smart. I mean, I've got people that love to tease me, and my patients know what a carbohydrate is. They know what a fat is, right? They know what protein looks like. So we talk a lot about food. And so I took all online courses and tried to learn as much as I could about food. Food's the key. Because I feel like this is a food problem with the food cure. Okay?
So you're saying that the American diet,
SAD diet? Standard American diet?
Standard American diet.
Yes, go ahead.
The SAD, I love it. I hadn't heard that before.
Oh, yeah.
The standard American diet, the SAD diet, is not particularly good for our health.
No.
Why?
It kind of started with the food pyramid, but that's kind of like more historical data. But it's the approach that I think that is the best is letting people know that it's not their fault. If you are obese, if you're one of the 35%, okay, but we would even expand that even further. I mean, it's probably more than that. We have overweight and we have obese and we're morbidly obese. So that's 75% of our population.
That's a lot of us.
It's too much.
Yeah,
okay,
it is.
And it's 1 in 5 children. Why? Okay, so that's what you're trying to get at, and I get it. It has a lot to do with our food. When we started demonizing fat, we replaced the fat and put the sugar in. And people don't know that. They don't realize that. I really feel like the American people are victims of corporate greed and whatnot. But
you reminded me, because I should tell people that I did not grow up in a household that paid much attention to nutrition.
Yeah.
People in my family are not generally obese, and we're in pretty good shape. There's nobody in my household or my family that's diabetic. Even though I'm a nurse, I missed a lot of the nutrition talk. Okay, so I think I am your target audience here.
Okay, I totally agree.
Even though I have a science background, okay, there's so much I can learn, and I'm starting to learn. Thank you, Kyle, to learn about things like how our diet has been structured by those people that do this sort of thing. People, for example, in government and science, that tell us that at one point they were telling us to restrict the fat in our diet, have a low-fat diet, and that's healthy. And what you're telling me is that is not exactly the science of today.
Right. Well, it's the current understanding, and that is the crux of the problem. What I would love to do is just wipe everybody's memory of what you know about nutrition. Let's start from scratch.
Okay.
Let's really break this down.
And you've been able to help people.
Yeah.
With sort of your education, your program, okay? And again, when I say program, he's not selling a program, okay? And people like your brother. Tell me about your brother.
Oh, brother. Oh, okay. So that was difficult for me. I was shocked But I wasn't totally surprised since my mother's diabetic. My brother was diagnosed with diabetes in a very unfortunate way. He was, he complained to his doctor that his feet were cold. And the doctor said, well, put a hot pad on, electric heating pad. So he plugged it in, he didn't realize how hot it was, and it blistered his feet.
Because he had, I'm guessing.
Because he had nerve damage to his feet previously.
Diabetic peripheral neuropathy.
Yes, okay. Unfortunately. So a lot of diabetics, because these nerves are so long, and because they don't have proper circulation, these nerves die. And when the nerves die, first they get tingly, and then they become numb. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
A lot of people.
And it stinks. It's sad because it's avoidable. Because it's, once again, the food problem with the food cure. Had my brother told me that he was drinking like a gallon of Gatorade before lunch, I would have said, hey, bro, you got a problem. Let's do something about it. You've got diabetes. Let's take care of this, right? Mm-hmm. So quite a while went by before he, realized he was diabetic. Of course, the doctor was apologetic. However,
yes.
Here he is with diabetes. And the story goes, my brother used to tease me because I would give him all kinds of nutritional advice, and he would like sit there and drink a beer in front of me. And I'm like, man, dude, really? Come on, what are you doing? That's liquid bread.
This is what brothers do, though.
Yes,
okay.
Oh yeah, teasing me.
That.
He knows how to press my buttons, and my patients love pressing my buttons. So he was pretty reluctant to any sort of change until COVID came around, because he got really scared. Like, okay, I can live with diabetes, but can I live with COVID? Because this is a horrible outcome. Mm-hmm. And the fact that COVID is pretty specific in what it likes to target, that spike protein attaching to that ACE2 receptor. So that's higher in diabetics. So COVID loves diabetics. It's its favorite target, unfortunately.
And your brother realized this?
My brother realized that, and then that was what I needed to convince him to do something different, which was, hey, you want to reverse your diabetes? Let's give it a shot. So he was kind of my guinea pig. I mean, it was kind of fun. But we put the continuous glucose monitor on the back of his arm, and that tells you 24/7, and it can be viewed in real time exactly what his blood sugar was. Mm-hmm. And so we started looking at it, and we kind of quickly figured out, well, let's get a baseline. Like, where are you? Like, how diabetic really are you? And before, I want to say it was in, I think 5 days, or maybe it was even shorter than that we got the insulin turned off. And so we let it rise like a few days high, and then before we know it, it's like, hey, your blood sugar's lower now without the insulin than you were 2 weeks ago with the insulin.
Not what you would expect.
Not what you expect. You're like, that doesn't make sense. Wow.
Yeah.
But it kind of did, because the insulin was making his diabetes worse. He has type 2 diabetes. So I guess a brief explanation would be in order. So
yes.
Normally we want our insulin levels to be in a very tight range, kind of like everything in our body. It's actually very tightly regulated. You got sensors all over you. Mm-hmm. The human body is very complicated, and it's very much controlled by hormones, and that's really important to understand that. It's because I think that's the crux of the problem, is we don't understand the difference in hormones from one person to the other, as well as our genetics, but it's really hormonal control when we look at our weight. But insulin needs to be very tightly regulated. Type 2 diabetes is too much insulin. Type 1 is not enough, so you got to bring it up. Mm-hmm. Type 2 diabetes, you have too much insulin, you got to bring it down to normal. Mm-hmm. If your insulin level is already elevated, squirting it with more insulin makes the insulin resistance worse. So this problem that we have between normal insulin and high amounts of insulin is what we call insulin resistance. So what happens there is that your insulin level is always elevated, and it's just not working properly at the cellular level. So normally insulin shuttles glucose or carbohydrates into the cell, right? Amongst many other things that we'll get to, and this is really very important to understand what insulin does. But insulin, it brings that glucose into the cell, and it will cause the cell to store energy, whether the cell needs it or not.
And
So
how does it store this energy?
it stores that glucose as glucose for later in the form of glycogen, okay? And of course that needs a bunch of water to be stored. So you have all these glucose stores, and the body is not designed to deal with glucose very well, because your glucose tank, 24 hours. My fat tank is 6 months, right?
Right.
Fat's awesome. Fat, like, don't fear fat. Fat's actually your friend, okay? And that really determines chronic disease and metabolic health anyways, is the nature and the health of your fat cells. Imagine how useful fat is. It's an organ that can expand and contract based on how much energy you need or don't need. So insulin is there to store that energy, but it stops you from burning it. So you got something that's pushing energy into a cell, storing it,
Right.
and stop you from burning it.
Right?
So the cell goes, hey, there's insulin around. We're not going to burn energy. We're going to store. The construction crews here, they're going to make bigger cells. They're going to expand. We're going to store as much energy as we can,
Yes.
whether it's in the form of glucose. But if you take in extra glucose, it's going to be converted into fat.
Yeah.
So now we have a fat cell that's expanding, which it does successfully, which is awesome. But as long as
When you say awesome, it's like an evolutionary advantage
it's
for like our ancestors.
It's a great advantage.
If you're, say, a bear and you want to hibernate through the winter, you're going to need some fat. And for our ancestors, that's the way it was. We needed to have some fat stores for those lean times. Okay, but
you brought up so many good points, though. I love it.
But we're not living in prehistoric times anymore.
Well, but we should be.
Yes.
We should be asking ourselves every day, is this really food?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about the sad diet. I mean, is that food? But so are we going back to the insulin? Because insulin's an interesting molecule. We could probably spend like an hour talking about how amazing this is.
And I'm sure we will one day.
Okay.
But we were talking about your brother.
My brother. Yes, sorry. I got distracted. So my brother's one of those TOFI guys. Okay,
But he ended up taking your advice.
He did take the advice.
Is he still taking your advice?
Yes, he did reverse his diabetes. I don't know his current status. He's not using his continuous glucose monitor every day. But when he was doing great. He was able to take his A1C from 10.
Which is very high.
Yes, which is a very high blood sugar. Probably, I hate to guess what that would be, but 200 something, okay, down to into the 110s, 120 range, without any insulin, and just watching his food. And so he lost a bunch of weight. So he looks great, diabetes is well controlled, has more energy, and that's that. I don't want to minimize this, but that's a typical story, and that's a typical response that I get when I do the monitoring of patients using the continuous glucose monitor. That's very helpful.
Yeah. It's not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole to say that diabetes kills people. Of course, it does.
Yeah.
We all know that.
Yeah.
And your brother certainly could have been one of those people.
Yeah.
And by following this program, he's still living and doing well and doing the things that he wants to do.
Yes.
And it's important because your brother does something important, and we need.
You can let me put a plug in for my brother? Oh, I'm stoked. Okay, cool. My brother, when I first found out, I was really sad, because I thought, man, of all the people in my life, to have someone like, that they're gonna, their life expectancy is shorter, and that's frustrating to me. That's maybe a little bit infuriating to me, and that's where the passion comes from, because with this information comes this sense of responsibility. So the ability to be able to share it with my brothers is phenomenal. He now does a lot of diving, a lot of scuba diving. He is an industrial design guy that has actually created some research study that he's doing a lot of research on the giant kelp forest off the coast of California. And it is shrunk to about 1/10 of its original size. And that has to do with the fact that there's some global warming issues, but the urchins have overgrown, and they're eating the giant kelp. And when the kelp gets destroyed, there is no home for the fish, there's no home for the mammals, so your otter population is going down and whatnot. So here now on his little research section that he has in Monterey, he's got now 4 resident otters. So it's phenomenal. But it's awesome that he can continue to dive. And I'm like, hey, bro, you have something really important to do. Sharpen those tools, take care of yourself, because that's what we need. Exactly. The world needs that, right? We need the best, we need the most energy, we need to be able to function properly, and this is about like getting older gracefully, getting older and still being very functional, because when you do this very low carbohydrate diet, right, keeping insulin low, is that you're able to move more, you have more energy, you have better cognitive function. You are thinking clearly. And the best part is hunger's gone.
Oh, now, I'm glad you said that. Because when you're talking about restricting your diet of carbohydrates and sugars, it just seems like this is going to be torture.
Yeah.
Is it?
Surprisingly.
I mean, all right, so we don't have to get into the nuts and bolts of it on the very first episode, but you're going to tell me that it's not torture. In fact, if you can follow what we know now, what the science is, and what Kyle has learned, it's not, and it will improve your life immensely. Yeah, and that brings out the passion in guys like you. Okay. Yeah. So your brother was not your only success story either. Tell me more.
I've got a bunch. Yeah. I would love to just go through like all these patients that I monitor and watch. I mean, everyone has a great story, and that's what's cool is that I'm able to look at their blood glucose and see how their lifestyle affects their glucose. So you very quickly get to know these patients quite well, because they'll say something like, stress will affect your blood sugar, right? Blood glucose. And you'll see things like, one of them is, she's an RN as well. And she said, grandson stole car, smashed it. Blood sugar goes from 100 to like 250, right?
Okay, all right. So she knew this because she was wearing the continuous glucose monitor.
Yes, I was able to see it, and she was able to make notations on her app. She's scanning this with her phone.
Okay, so slow down just a second and explain the continuous glucose monitor. Sure, the continuous glucose monitor.
The continuous glucose monitor is it's a round device. I'm specifically talking about the Freestyle Libre. That's the inexpensive one that most people can afford. Okay, and I don't have my patients try it all the time. You only wear it for a 2-week period at a time. It's about the size of a quarter. It goes on the back of your arm. It has a very, very small, almost like a fishing line that has like a sensor on the end of it, and that stays inside you.
Yes, and people tell me that you cannot feel that it's there. It does not interfere with your lifestyle in any way. You shower with it on. You don't even know it's there. And it measures your blood glucose and gives you a reading and your trends on your cell phone.
Right. It gives you a number, but probably more importantly, it gives you a number with direction. What if you were 150? Are you going up or down? I don't know.
What's my trend?
Am I going to stay at 150? So it gives you that feedback that you need, like, hey, what did that soda do to me? Well, the soda increased my blood sugar by 200. That's really useful information, and that educates the patient.
Okay, and you could find the things that really drive your blood sugar up or down.
Yeah, and it's surprising.
And so your RN friend found that stress.
Yes, stress.
Her son in the car wreck.
The stress and unfortunately later COVID. It smashed the car, or really angry, and watch her sugar go up, or she didn't get enough sleep. Like, what does sleep do? Right. The next day, your blood sugar is going to be higher. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting is that your blood glucose will rise throughout the day. Your blood sugar is lowest in the morning, right? So that'll be lower versus later in the evening. But when you think about morning, you think about it's break fast, right? That's when you're going to break your fast.
Right.
That means that your glucose level is lowest in the morning because your insulin level has been quite low, and you've burnt off quite a bit of carbohydrates, stored glucose, by morning time. And like I said, the carbohydrate stores are very small. They're not they're not really that great of an energy source. I mean, you have energy that only lasts you a day. What is that for? Well, we're kind of cool hybrid animals that we can burn that if we need to, right? Or we can burn the fat. We got lots of fat we can burn. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Fat. So as a hybrid engine, what are we supposed to run on? Carbohydrates or fat? That's the ultimate question here.
Okay. So we only have a few minutes left in the program, in our very first one. So let's give people sort of a sense of what's to come and how maybe they should modify their behavior and their diet. Just a little bit big picture stuff.
Yeah.
In order to improve their lives.
So if you don't have the luxury of having a continuous glucose monitor, I mean, not everybody does. I will tell you this. The amount of carbohydrates that you need to sustain your life is 0.
No.
It's done. You don't need any.
You don't need any
You
carbohydrates.
don't need any carbohydrates in your diet. And there's so many examples in history and throughout the world, even today, that they live their life with really no carbohydrates. They'll eat meat, right? And what's interesting about these people is they don't have any of the diseases that we have. So the question is, ask yourself, do you need carbohydrates in your diet? Start reading your labels. Start counting how many grams of carbs that you eat a day. I mean, you'd be surprised how you feel when you're under 100 grams. You're going to feel really good. So look at your carbohydrate intake. See where the carbs are. Be a carbohydrate detective. Where is it? Do I need those? Is that just sugar? Is that helping me? Do I need that energy?
And carbohydrates come from what foods? Obviously, sugars,
Grains,
pastas,
fruit,
rice.
Yes, rice. Sugar is probably the biggest.
How about fruit?
Fruit is nature's candy. It's only seasonal. It's only here for, well, right now, like you could eat oranges because it's wintertime, but when are you going to eat carbs again? Unless you live further south, right? We weren't really designed to eat that much in the way of carbohydrates because it's only for a season. We would have fattened up to get us through November, December, like a couple more months maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of cool that we're that flexible, but it's probably kind of hurting us because we think that we should be eating carbs all the time.
That's the sad diet.
That is the sad diet.
It is.
Don't fear fat.
Okay.
Fat's your friend.
All right. Fat's your friend.
Yes.
Low carb diet. Okay. This is not the food pyramid we were taught as a kid.
It's upside down.
It
and
is.
that's probably the way it should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you follow this program, what?
Oh, well,
You said
do your own experiment. Try it on yourself.
Better mental acuity, you told me, which I could use.
Many benefits. Many benefits. Wonderful things. Yes. Health, energy. Chronic disease tends to go away.
Okay, so we're going to have more episodes. This is just the very first one. So people are watching, look for the next episode, and we'll get into more.
We'll get into as much detail as you want. But the whole point, though, is to educate the patient so they can make their own choices.
Yeah. And not everybody's going to believe us, but
it's okay.
that's all right.
I get rejected all the time, but I still keep going.
You get a sense that, it's going to change in time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's taken on some inertia.
All right. Well, I think we're about out of time for this episode.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks. That was fun.
All right.
Cool.
So this is Kyle Rootsaert. He's a pharmacist. I'm Chris Stevenson. I'm an oncology nurse. Hey, thanks for watching.
Wow. Thank you.